What if manifesting your biggest dreams was more than just wishful thinking?
You embed something deeply so that your subconscious is always on the alert for any opportunity to make that connection to manifest your intention.
What if there was a scientific approach to making your goals a reality by harnessing the power of your brain, your mind, and your body?
Our brain is an extraordinary tool which allows us actually to do what many would consider impossible.
What would you say are some of the big obstacles that get in the way from people successfully manifesting?
If you tell yourself, I am not worthy, it is not possible, I cannot, by definition, that becomes true.
What role does the brain play in manifestation?
When the term law of attraction is used, this implies that if you don't get it, it's somehow your fault.
Why is it important to learn how to work with fear?
The greatest gift someone can give themselves is actually liberating themselves from fear.
Do you have a practice that you have to be able to create the life you desire and deserve?
In terms of manifesting, there are a couple things I think you have to understand. One is
Welcome back, Kwik Brains. I'm your host and your brain coach, Jim Kwik. Our guest today is Dr. James Doty, who amongst many achievements is a neurosurgeon and a faculty member of the Stanford University School of Medicine since 1997. He has dedicated a part of his career to exploring the mysteries of the brain, and in this episode, we'll go beyond the spiritual aspects of manifestation and delve into the scientific explanation of how our brain networks, our nervous system, and even the electromagnetic field of our hearts play a crucial role in shaping our reality. He is the author of the brand new book, Mind Magic. Welcome to the show, Dr. Doty.
Great to be with you, Jim. I'm really a big fan of your work, and I appreciate you having me today.
Thank you. So manifestation is a topic that we hear a lot about. How do people reach these goals? And manifestation has become very popular over the years. It's still, I think, it's confusing. There's some misunderstanding, I think. Maybe we could clarify in this conversation. So maybe you could tell us from a neuroscience perspective, what role do things like brain networks, do our nervous system play in manifesting? Or how would you define manifestation?
I would define manifestation as the ability to embed within your subconscious an intention or goal. And the key is, how do you do that such that there is the greatest likelihood of it actually occurring? And that's really, I think, the key here. As you know, the term manifestation is very popular in sort of the public lexicon. But unfortunately, and probably due to historically a lack of knowledge about neuroscience, it has been associated with what I would call woo-woo or pseudoscience. And that's not to say that some of the techniques that might be used can be helpful, but there has to be also a little bit more information in terms of why you're doing it and exactly how you do it. And in fact, in the book, there's a 6-step program on really how to maximize your potential to manifest.
Yeah, I highly recommend people get a copy of your book. We'll put a link in the show notes, as we always do, at jimkwik.com/notes, just so people could see the 6 steps for themselves, and maybe we'll give an abbreviated version of it. What role does our nervous system play in, from your point of view, in manifestation, in reaching those goals?
Well, as you know, our brain is extraordinarily powerful. Most people just don't realize it. And I think that's really the key here. And we know this through a variety of neuroscience studies, particularly those related to meditation or training your brain. And of course, you know it both by that knowledge as well as your own experience. Our brain is an extraordinary tool which allows us actually to do what many would consider impossible. And that's far different than the typical promotion of manifestation, where you send out some sort of energy and the universe decides whether you're worthy to receive what you're trying to manifest. And the problem with that is, one, it's not true. Two, in some instances, especially when the term law of attraction is used, this implies that if you don't get it, it's somehow your fault. And there can be even a sort of a blaming of you for not being able to make it happen.
In the book, you talk about our nervous system. Is it important for our nervous system to be calm? And how important is it for us to state regulation in terms of feeling good in the beginning of the process or throughout the process of manifestation?
Absolutely. And I think that's an excellent point. And it brings up another aspect of what has commonly been promoted, which is you should manifest for me what I want. And the problem is that when it's all about you, it actually diminishes your ability to do that. And the reason is because many people are in a comparison state, which what our society has actually created in terms of defining success. If I'm wealthy, if I have this position, et cetera, people will look at me. I'll get external affirmation. I'll feel better about myself. But of course, there are a couple aspects of this in that, in some ways, this is out of a fear state. And as you know, if you're in a fear state, this activates what we call our sympathetic nervous system or flight, fight, or freeze response. And in that context, that doesn't necessarily mean your brain shuts down, but it limits your ability to have full access to various cognitive brain networks, which actually allow you to manifest the best. And what's required for that is, as you point out, emotion regulation or being in the right mental state. And what is that mental state? That's engagement of your parasympathetic nervous system
Mm.
or our rest and digest system. And this is when not only do our cognitive brain networks function at their best, our peripheral physiology functions at its best. And that's actually how we've evolved to be. Unfortunately, the nature of the sympathetic nervous system has been with us forever, but it's not evolved to help us in modern society.
So we're in that sympathetic fight, flight, freeze mode. We're in our survival kind of mind and kind of holds us hostage from all those other areas: executive functioning, problem solving, creativity, imagination. It's interesting. I mean, so not only is this wonderful for following your formula for creating and manifesting, but also just for our own physiology, for our own health and well-being. When you hear a lot about manifestation, you hear about energy, right? Or a vibration, and how important like our brainwave states. Our audience is pretty sophisticated in the area of gamma, beta, alpha, theta, delta. You also talk about the importance of electromagnetic field of the heart. Maybe you could talk a little bit about these areas and how it's linked to our brain functions and manifestation.
Sure. Well, you mentioned various brain waves. Of course, when we're awake or when we're highly focused, that's activating our beta or our gamma waves, while certainly sleep or, if you will, insight or meditation activate our delta and our theta waves. But actually, it turns out that while because of the skull, there's limitation in regard to how far outside of our brains our oscillation or frequencies extend. But in terms of the heart, which is interesting because the heart has input and output from our vagus nerve, which actually holds our autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And it's distributed not only in the heart, but throughout all of our organs. But amazingly, it extends 3 to 5 feet outside of our body, this heart electromagnetic energy. And I'm sure you've been in situations where when you interact with a person, you, if you will, quote unquote, feel their energy, this positive sense, this presence that actually makes you feel good about yourself because they're releasing their own positive energy that they carry with them. And again, this is the power of our brain to create that environment. But like anything, including manifestation, you don't run a marathon one day because you decide, I'm going to run 26 miles. This has to do with habit formation. And this is very much what manifestation requires. You start with simple tasks. We learn the habit of focusing your intention. And then this progresses to where it becomes very natural for you, and you can do it pretty much easily. You just have to learn the steps to do that.
Is your process, does it integrate? And again, I highly recommend people get a copy of your new book and a copy maybe for somebody they care about to be able to gift it to them. So is the process involving mindfulness and meditation to get to that manifestation? And do you have a practice that you have either weekly or daily, like a mindfulness or meditation process to be able to create the life you desire and deserve?
Absolutely. And of course, I've been doing it for over 50 years. So, in some ways, mine's shortcut, but it's because, again, creating a habit that you do, and I won't say every day because there's nothing that I've done every day, although I've tried, but pretty much every day where this becomes your essence and you walk that walk. It's like what Thich Nhat Hanh talks about walking meditation. It's your mere presence of how you see the world. But in terms of manifesting, there are a couple things I think you have to understand. One is many people, based on the baggage they carry from childhood, have habits of behavior that actually interfere with their lives, and they've never really examined them. So, one thing is that is very important to do because I'm sure you've met people who say, I don't understand it. I've been divorced 3 times and I've married the exact same person every time. Well, this is because of habits that they carry with them that are unconscious. And these can have a profound effect on every decision we make. And then the other aspect, which we alluded to a little bit ago, is this idea of clarity of your intention, what you really want. Because as we talked about, if you will, the Western narratives of success, which many people think equals happiness, I would say is based on a fear motive. And this is desiring things for you. I want a car. I want a mansion. I want millions of dollars. Versus saying, well, as a species, we evolved to care first to our offspring, and we're rewarded for that. When we care, we get the release of various hormones, such as oxytocin or the bonding or love hormone, which stimulates our pleasure and reward centers. And as a result, we feel good when we care, and it shifts us into this parasympathetic nervous system. So when we're in that state, not only are we benefiting, we're benefiting others. And it changes how we see the world and oftentimes what we actually desire because we understand on a deep level that gives us purpose and meaning. But getting back to this issue of how do we do it, first off, we have to understand that we are inundated through our sensory organs with about 10 million bits of information a second, but we're only able to process consciously about 50 to 100 bits. So we are able, though, on a conscious level, to embed our intention into our subconscious. But again, we have to be in the right mental state. What happens then is this has an impact on this area of our brain, of this cognitive brain network called the default mode network. And this is self referential. It's usually associated with daydreaming or mind wandering. But this is where we create the narrative of who we are or who we want to be. And this compares to what we call the task positive network, which are actually the action portion of taking what is in our subconscious and having our conscious manifest that. And what that includes is what we call our salience network. How do we make something salient to us? And once we do that, then this activates our attention network. We focus our attention, and then this results in our executive control network being activated to realize that intention. And I'm sure you've been in a situation where you've been at a party, as an example, and it's very noisy. Yet, in the face of that, if your name is mentioned, you turn to it because your identity as to who you are is deeply embedded in you, and your subconscious is always attuned to that. This is exactly what you do in the context of manifesting. You embed something deeply so that your subconscious is always on the alert for any opportunity to make that connection to manifest your intention.
Maybe we could make this vivid tapestry even more clear for people. Those elements you mentioned in different networks and the process that you have, is there a story that you have that illustrates the use of, one or more of these elements?
Yeah, in fact, recently there's a project that I've been working on that's fairly esoteric. It's not something that you would just hear in normal conversation. And it's a project that I have been thinking about for some time. So a few months ago, I was actually at a coffee shop, and again, extraordinarily noisy.
Hmm.
Yet, in the din of that noise, I heard two words that are fairly uncommon and that directly related to what I had been thinking about. As a result, I got up, introduced myself to these two individuals, and it turned out that they were neuroscientists working on a similar type of project. And now we're collaborating on the project. But that's a very concrete example of how that occurs. And I think, though, there are a couple aspects, though, people should also be aware of. One is oftentimes this is not related to our timeline. We all want to say, I want this to occur by this date, it has to occur. It doesn't work that way. And the other is that sometimes people are so attached to the outcome that that actually impairs the actual outcome from occurring, or they get lost in that. And actually, if it doesn't happen, and none of this is guaranteed, all I have done is set down a framework that allows you to maximize your ability to manifest. It is not a guarantee. And I don't want people to get lost in this idea. Well, Jim Doty said this, and therefore it has to work 100% of the time. It doesn't work that way. So, what we're doing is creating a situation where it has the greatest likelihood to do so. So, letting go of attachment is important. And I think the other aspect is, as you know, some people get so focused on an outcome, it's to ignore everything else in life. And actually, while that may be useful in a select group of instances, in general, though, that actually can be very damaging to you, because if you focus on one thing and you climb to the top of the mountain and you sit there and you go, I did it, and you're standing by yourself and you left a carnage of unhappy wives, children, or other people, that's not the ideal way to do this either. In fact, it actually has many negative consequences.
What would you say are some of the big obstacles that get in the way from people successfully manifesting the things or the people or the experiences that they intend on? Is there like one or two things that are just kind of obstacles for them or
Sure.
misunderstandings?
None of the ingredients contained in the Kwik Mind product are claimed to treat any disease or health condition. Consult your own physician before commencing a nootropic regimen to ensure that this product is appropriate for you.
Do you struggle to stay focused or find that your mind wanders when you need to be sharp? Are you looking for an advantage or an edge that can eliminate sluggishness and elevate your cognitive performance? That's why, after decades of research and development, I'm thrilled to bring you Kwik Mind. It's more than just a supplement. It's a key to unlocking your cognitive freedom on a day-to-day basis. Just imagine having the clarity of thought, sharp focus, better memory, and being calm under pressure. Every capsule of Kwik Mind is a blend of 5 pristine ingredients, each backed by research and chosen for its ability to support specific cognitive functions. So, are you ready to meet the sharpest version of yourself? It's just a click away. We have it all at kwikmind.com, KWIKmind.com. Place your order for Kwik Mind today and join a community that's redefining what it means to live a life of mental abundance.
Absolutely. And one is, as we talked about, not understanding the baggage you carry and how it interferes with your life. But I think the other thing, which I know you're familiar with, is negative self-talk or a lack of self-compassion. And this is due to what we call negativity bias. Negative things have a tendency to stick to you. And the reality is, if you tell yourself, I am not worthy, it is not possible, I cannot, by definition, that becomes truth. Your brain doesn't have the ability to sort between truth and untruth. It only listens to what you tell it. And this is why so many people have given, if you will, their self agency away, because they listen to other people or are influenced by situations which actually limit their beliefs. And so you have to have this unshakable belief in your own possibility to train your mind to do what many people might say is impossible. And I will tell you from my own experience, and I know you read Into the Magic Shop, my first book, which was a New York Times bestseller, is in, I think, 36 languages. I tell my own experiences growing up in poverty with an alcoholic father, a mother who was impaired by a stroke and chronically depressed and attempted suicide on public assistance, and how, with the help of one person who taught me a brain training exercise and a visualization technique, that really changed the trajectory of my own life.
It's one of those situations where somebody was asking me about being optimistic, and because if you have some kind of ailment, let's say there's something that you feel might be a tumor, or and then you don't get checked out because you have the intention of healing, but you don't go to the doctor to get it diagnosed or any kind of treatment. And again, this conversation is not meant to diagnose or treat any ailment. Talk to a health practitioner for your safety, and obviously. But yeah, it's making those kind of decisions, and fear plays a role too, right? It's one of those we talk about in our memory course. When we're talking about brain anatomy, we talk about the amygdala and how it could be a switching station for emotions like fear. And my question would be, why is it important to learn how to work with fear? Because I think there's a lot of, when you say baggage, it could be scary, right? Creating the life of your dreams can be scary, and so could regret. On the other side, do you recommend people work through those feelings or those emotions of fear during the manifestation process?
Well, I think there are a couple aspects. As you know, oftentimes the fear narrative that someone creates in their head is far worse than the actual event.
Mm.
And I think understanding this reality is very important. And this relates to emotion regulation. And I think spending time understanding how reactive you are, and I'm sure you're familiar with the work of Viktor Frankl, and there's a saying that's attributed to him: between stimulus and response is a pause,
Yeah.
and within that pause lies your freedom. And I think that's really the key here, is being able to understand how fear works and actually how fear limits us. As I was saying earlier, when you sit there and say it's not possible, or geez, I can't do that because I'm afraid what might happen, now you've created a boundary or a barrier for what you're able to accomplish. And I think the greatest gift someone can give themselves is actually liberating themselves from fear, because the life is going to go on whether we like it or not, no matter how fearful we are or how we are not. And so having a calmness about you and being able to sit and not get lost in thinking about the fear, but simply being present for what is happening right at this moment, versus a narrative you're creating for the future, which isn't real or hasn't happened.
Yeah, Dr. Doty, I could talk to you for hours on this topic out of personal curiosity and personal interest. And that's why I think it's an amazing resource, is your latest book. Where can people find their copy of Mind Magic?
Well, I don't like necessarily to be a salesman, so I would recommend you go to your library. If not, you can acquire the book at bookshop.org, which actually supports independent bookstores. And of course, there's always Amazon. But wherever you get it, I hope you enjoy it. And like I said, there is this 6-step program in there that very clearly outlines a process where you can create, if you will, as your book says, a limitless life.
Fantastic. I want to thank everybody. We've learned that in this conversation, we're just touching upon how manifestation is more than just positive thinking. It could also be a more scientific process that involves rewiring our neural pathways and calming our nervous system, aligning our thoughts, our emotions, our physiology, with our desired outcomes. So thank you, Dr. Doty, for sharing your wisdom and inspiring us to manifest and live our best lives.
Thanks a lot, Jim. And it's really a pleasure. And I hope we have an opportunity to connect again.
I look forward to it. Thank you, everybody, for listening. As always, don't forget to subscribe and join our 1.6 million YouTube community online. And please leave a comment. I read every single one on whatever platform you're listening to for this episode. You could follow us on social media at Jim Kwik, Kwik. This is your brain coach, Jim Kwik. Until next time, always be limitless.